Hello, Dancing with the Stars fans. I'm Daniel Montgomery. I'm here with our contributor, Cordell Martin, who is one of our top predictors at Gold Derby. Not as top as I am, but, he predicts pretty well at Gold Derby, Dancing with the Stars. But what we didn't predict was, we both switched to Rashad Jennings. You did as well. After Monday night, we both switched to Rashad Jennings for our prediction for who would win the Mirabelle Trophy. But Normani Corday finishing third was a little bit surprising. What did you think about that, for starters?
Going into the finals, I figured that the tide changed and it was, destined for Rashad to win just based on a couple of things. But I just always thought that Normani would at least place second. In the past, usually the top three scores of the season usually ends up in first or second place. So just going based on that stat alone and, with her fan base that I assume was really strong, and then the scores that I was like, there's no way she would be third before David. And sure enough, I should have known just how wacky this season has been that David was going to strike again, and boy, did he did.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We've seen it before where a contestant has a really strong fan base. They're not that high, the highest scoring contestant, whatever their challenges are. Either they have no rhythm or they're like Noah Galloway, who was a double amputee, who had severe challenges that I do not begrudge him that spot in the finals at all. But people who are lower scoring but have certain fan bases get that far into the finals. And then the finals is when people say, okay, let's get serious here. Who is the best? Because then Noah Galloway finished third. Alex Scarlato's finished third. Candace Cameron Bure finished third her season. All these people who had the fan bases and didn't have the greatest dancing in that finals always ended up third. Okay, we got you this far, but now you belong in third place. But it didn't stop there for David Ross, which is so surprising that he got over Simone Biles to get into the finals, and he got over Normani to get into second place. Were you a little scared when they announced Normani was in third, that maybe David Ross had actually won it?
Once they announced that Normani was third, I just knew Rashad was winning. Just going back to Monday night, the dance order, he danced last during the semifinals, but then he got to dance last again for the finals. And then his package, with Emma just mentioning that he's never won anything in his life before both of his dances. And then what kind of sealed the deal for me is once I found out he was going to be on the tour, and, it wouldn't make sense to have the runner-up or the second runner-up on the tour. You want the champion. So I figured that Rashad was going to beat David. And then also when they had the dance-off a couple weeks back and they were going head-to-head, Rashad actually beat David with the viewer vote. So at least I knew that we had something to kind of base that on in terms of the viewers' votes.
Yeah, that I'd almost forgotten about that. Yeah, I remember that being surprising because they went head to head on the dance off, and the judges decide who they like the best. But then there's also a live kind of, you could see people voting live from home who they like the best. And Rashad ended up winning the viewer vote, but not by like a dramatic margin. It was a surprisingly close margin, given that I think David Ross actually tripped in the middle of his dance, and he still finished very close to Rashad. But Rashad did get more votes, so if Rashad had more votes, obviously going into the finale, it didn't make sense that even David Ross wouldn't even be able to catch him. It makes me almost wish that Normani hadn't gotten immunity that night, because that would have been the only time we would have gotten to see the strength of her fan base in actual pure numbers if she had to go head to head against another contestant.
Yeah, I agree. The question I wanted to ask you, do you think that her freestyle and her redemption dance, do you feel that because she's done amazing, leading up to it with memorable routines, you felt that was a bit lackluster and that maybe the fans just wasn't rallying behind it as opposed to David and Rashad?
It's interesting. I think there were two cycles in this season of contestants peaking too soon. And first it was Simone, who peaked on the first night. She had the highest judges score on the first night, and then didn't get the highest score again for the rest of the season until the night she was eliminated. So she peaked really soon and wasn't able to recapture that. And then when she started going down, Normani started coming up. And then she kind of had her peak moment in weeks 8 or 9, especially with that contemporary routine inspired by the experience of slavery. And so at that point, like if that was her freestyle, she might have won the Mirrorball trophy. But after a dance like that and her Argentine tango on movie night and it was hard for her to top herself. And on top of that, because the judges had seen her do so well, she got judged a lot more strictly on what she did do in the finals. I honestly think her redemption dance, which scored fewer points than Rashad's, was better than Rashad's. If those exact same dances had been given and it had been reversed, if Normani had done the dance that Rashad did, she would have gotten like 8s or 9s or something like that. But Rashad was gradually building, and so because that was genuinely a very improved dance for him, and you could see exactly where he made all those improvements, then it gave him the opportunity to peak at just the right time. So Simone peaked too soon, then Normani peaked like a week or two too soon, and then Rashad was just in the right position to capitalize.
That is so true, so true. And then just looking back at this season, do you think that the producers should make some changes? Because I've been reading online that, although there was outrage with Normani being in third, there were a lot of people who felt that David and Rashad deserved to be first and second because they didn't have the dance background like Nancy, Simone, Normani, and Heather, and that, maybe they're trying to take a stance that they're want to see more celebrities, that have no dance experience be on the show as opposed to the ringers on there. So do you think that for the fall season they should cast as predominantly people with no dance experience?
Well, it's interesting. I think what's ironic about that whole situation is that if you're upset at the ringers for having too much dance experience and that gives them an unfair advantage, there was no advantage this year. Yeah. Heather Morris finished 8th. Simone Biles finished 4th. Nancy Kerrigan finished 6th. And Normani Cordell finished 3rd. Normani Cordell, who had the highest score of any dancer of the season, finished 3rd. And the number 1 and number 2 contestants who finished 1st and 2nd had no prior dance experience. So if your argument is that they shouldn't have people with prior dance experience because they have an unfair advantage, and then you look at the results this season, where's that unfair advantage? They, all the women who had the prior kind of experience that would have led themselves to doing well on the show finished in the final standings worse than their scores were. So it's hard to make a case that they have an unfair advantage at this point. When they all kind of wiped out one at a time so spectacularly because of the viewer votes. So I honestly, it depends. Someone like Heather Morris, yeah, I get it. I get where people are coming from on that. She performed on the finale episode with the troupe dancers. She could have easily been hired as a troupe dancer for the show. She has that much experience. It made me want to see more from her, but I was looking at her thinking like, they basically hired a pro to dance as a celebrity contestant on the show, so I can see that. But someone like a Simone Biles, she does a lot of gymnastics, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she'll be a great dancer. And gymnasts have had a hit and miss kind of track record. Nancy Kerrigan is a figure skater, so she has some experience. But again, figure skaters haven't always done the best, and it's not the same kind of thing. So those people, I think, invite them on again. At the very least, I don't want to be stuck with, as selfish as this is, a season where you have 12 complete amateurs and the Dancing with the Stars, the producers, the casting directors are taking a gamble that at least a few of them will actually get great. or
Exactly.
you could end up with a thing where you have 3 David Rosses in the finals. No offense to David Ross, but that's not a great competitive final because you're not seeing the best dancing that you kind of would hope to see, even though it is an amateur competition.
Yeah, and I think it's great to have, every season because they set the standard, and for people, they find that one person that they're like, okay, they're at the top of their game. I need to step it up to be just as good or better than them. And you saw that. You saw the men really trying their best, although a lot of them struggled a lot. But you saw Nick and David and Rashad, saying like, Normani's killing it, Simone, Heather, I need to, work twice as hard to, get to the level at their level somewhat. But I think for a competitive nature and it shows a competition at the end of the day, you need to have, different experiences and celebrity on the show.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see them continue to allow people like even Heather. I mean, like if she had just been a dancer, that would be one thing. But she was on Glee. She had children, and so she hadn't been in it, the whole professional dance world, for quite a while. So, yeah, I think those people should be allowed to compete in the competition and should be scored accordingly. That's the one. That's the one change I would make in the future. Is that if you're going to have people with varying dance abilities, I understand wanting to keep a relatively level playing field. You don't want them to be so far up front that the first few weeks of the competition are boring. It's just, okay, you're just waiting for these 4 to dance in the finals. But at the same time, there needs to be less of the sort of, look at Normani, her foot came apart for half a millimeter there, so you're going to dock her a point, and David Ross gets an A for effort. There needs to be a little bit more consistency in how rigorously they're judging people. It doesn't have to be perfectly 1-to-1, because if you did that, then you'd have Normani getting 9s and 10s and David Ross realistically getting like 5s, 6s, or 7s throughout the season. But I do want the judges to kind of take a look at the results this season and say, let's be a little bit more strenuous on or if we're going to be strict, let's be strict to all, or if we're going to be kind of forgiving, let's be forgiving to all.
Yeah, and to your point, I agree with you 100%. I actually feel that they need to go back to 3 judges. Like, I feel like Lynn is a traditionalist. Like, you know what you're going to get with Lynn. Bruno's kind of in between, a traditionalist as well as like entertainment. And then Julianne and Carrie Ann, they're one and the same. Like, they're always going to favor, the hunk of the season and overscore them. Sentimental favorites like David Ross and overscore him too at times. And then once the results come up and someone good has went home, they're like, how did that happen? It's like, well, you guys are so inconsistent with your scoring. Like, you guys are partly to blame for the result. So I think maybe they should go back to 3 judges, keep Lynn and Bruno, and keep either Julianne or Carrie Ann, preferably Julianne, but
yes, we would. Another thing I would change in the scoring, I'm perfectly fine with, I don't mind all 4 judges returning as long as Carrie Ann just cuts it out with the whole lift thing.
yes.
I feel like she's almost sort of put herself into a corner where it's like everyone knows that she notices that and will dock points for it. And so she feels almost pressure on herself to say, like, if I see it and I don't dock points for it, people are going to be like, well, why didn't you dock points for it that time? You did it this time. I think she should come out next season and say, okay, there was a minor lift there, but I'm not going to, like, especially if it's like one of those little lifts where a person's feet left the ground just like for a second and she calls that a lift. Unless it's like just utterly, just completely ridiculously deliberate and out of character of the dance style, then she should just say, you know what, I'm going to let it go. And just say it publicly the first time it happens, like, that was a little bit of the lift, but I'm not going to be the lift Nazi this year. So, just kind of I would like to see that happen next season.
So true. And then another thing I was thinking, just to rewind back to what we were talking about last week, just like either judges save or dance off, because I know Strictly Come Dancing, which Dance with Stars is based off of, they do a dance-off to a certain point in the competition with the two lowest scoring couples of that week dance head-to-head, and then the judges will vote on their favorite. I think that would be something that they should look into, at least for the first couple of weeks until like the top 5 or 6. Then that should just be based on the fan votes and judges' scores. But I think that would be interesting to see who has a strong fan base, just for our selfish reasons in terms of predicting, so that we can be like, okay, well, David Ross to the finals because he hasn't been in the bottom 2 yet. Or we could see like if, or Normani Corday, or have those weeks where they're in the bottom 2, and you can kind of see like, oh, they might, have trouble later down the road when it's all about the fan vote. So
yeah, it reminds me, what happened with Normani reminds me a little bit of what happened on American Idol way back when. There was one episode where the bottom 3 was like 3 of the female singers, and it was Fantasia Barrino, it was Jennifer Hudson, and it was I'm forgetting her name. What was her name?
LaToya London.
LaToya London, that's it. And they were the 3 powerhouse singers. They all had kind of a similar fan base. These, female African American, R&B kind of singers. So they probably split a lot of votes between them. And that was the week Jennifer Hudson went home. But if we hadn't known that, American Idol voters hadn't known that Fantasia was in trouble that week, maybe she wouldn't have ended up going on to win that season of American Idol, because people wouldn't have thought she was in jeopardy at all, and they would have gotten complacent. And instead of being woken up to be like, oh my goodness, this person was almost in trouble there, I need to support them. So if we did know who was actually the lowest scoring when you combine the viewer votes with the judges' scores, I think it would be a little bit helpful for the viewers to know, like, if they really want someone they want to save, don't get complacent. This person was in danger because you thought they were gonna be safe. So yeah, I'm all for that, actually. Yeah, and actually, when we were talking online yesterday, and you're very good at this, speculating about who might be on the show next season. So I was wondering if you would be interested in throwing out a couple of the names that you mentioned to me before that all sounded fairly plausible.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed usually with the Dance with Stars finale is that they always have plenty of celebrity in the audience. And usually about 1 or 2 of those people show up on the next season. I mentioned to you possibly we could look at Chili from TLC as a part of the cast. They've appeared and performed on Dance with Stars at least twice. A routine on the finale with them, and they haven't had a member from TLC appear on the show yet. So they have a new album coming out in the fall, so that'd be great publicity for the group. And I think she'll be a great contestant on the show. Then someone maybe like Jordan Sparks. Kelly Pickler is the only American Idol contestant to appear on the show, and with American Idol coming back on next year on ABC, great way to have one of the winners on the show. And then just thinking of people like Paris Jackson, for example. Dance with Stars love to cast children of famous celebrities: Rumor Willis, Chaz Bono, Mindy Irwin, just to name a few. She's definitely been in the limelight these past few months. And so that would be great just to see the offspring of Michael Jackson, to see if she can somewhat live up to her father's legacy. Trying to think of anyone else. And then, of course, you always have those controversial stars like Billy Bush, who is on the apology tour about the whole Trump interview. He definitely would fit the mold like a Ryan Lochte, where he's coming on Dance with Stars to redeem himself and show himself in a more positive light. So those are a few names that we could possibly see, for next season.
And thinking about people who have been on the show or been guests and maybe musical guests and stuff like that. I think Andy Grammer was a similar situation. I think he had performed on the show before he was invited on as a contestant. Looking back at this past season, I think a possibility might be Auli'i Cravalho from Moana. Although I'm not, she might be too much in the upward trajectory of her career. And Dancing with the Stars is a little bit either you're like a really early in your career, like a Disney Channel kid who's not many people know publicly, or you're kind of on the downward slope of your career, or the other half. And I'm wondering if she would take the gig, because she's moving so far up in the world.
That would be very interesting. And then you also mentioned the possibility of the new Bachelorette being cast. I think they've only had one other Bachelorette on the show.
There might have been a couple. I know, of course, Melissa Rycroft won. Trista, I think she was on the show. I'm not sure if there have been any others, but just the way that they're promoting this Bachelorette, because of course, she's so historic. She's the first Black Bachelorette in the show's history. It just feels like I would be so surprised if they didn't continue to try and milk that for another couple of months by having her on the show on Dancing with the Stars. So we've seen that happen very consistently, at least with the Bachelors. I think the last 2 or 3 Bachelors in a row have been on the show. So I can see her doing it very, very easily.
Yeah, see her, and then of course there's going to be a random reality star or two just to round out the cast.
But I hope they, it's because they haven't really performed that well, the Real Housewives. I'm kind of hoping that if they're going to go with another reality personality, maybe just pick another reality show to pick someone from, Tara Jolay. She was such a great surprise last season. You've never seen a little person compete on Dancing with the Stars before, and she did very well, and she deserved to do very well because she was a very good dancer, as it turned out. So just look beyond the Real Housewives world. There's a whole reality smorgasbord to choose from.
I agree. So hopefully they, hopefully someone's listening to our chat and kind of take our ideas and put them, to use for the casting process. Do you think that they're going to cash in on the whole David Rawson, either cast another baseball player, or maybe they might look into other sports like golf, because I don't think they've ever had a golfer on the show?
I can definitely see them doing one or both of those things. Either going out into another sports, like, our first baseball player did really well. Let's pick another sport that hasn't had a really long track record. I'm not sure that they would do 2 baseball players in a row. Although they might. I mean, they've had football players on, successive seasons back to back. They've had so many on the show. So it certainly wouldn't be surprising if they found another, like a retired baseball player, because of course the baseball season happens while Dancing with the Stars is on during the spring and the fall. So it would be hard to do that for someone who's an active player. But someone who's just retired, or an old timer kind of baseball player, like and maybe an Alex Rodriguez or something like that, who's also fits almost the Ryan Lochte mold of being kind of controversial and potentially wanting a little bit of public redemption. That sort of thing would be really interesting to see. But yeah, I really do think they're going to want to cash in on David Ross in some way. Either try and cast someone from another sport like him, or go straight back to baseball and find another kind of diamond in the rough.
I agree.
We haven't seen any equestrian athletes perform on the show. They should do that.
Yeah, the only one. I mean, they had the oh God, I can't think of his name. He was the jockey for one of the winning horses for the Kentucky Derby.
You're right. They did have the jockey for that. I can't even remember the name of that horse, but I can't remember the name of the jockey either. So it evens out. But yeah, so many different avenues that would be fun. Another thing I would hope for next season, and I think I I think I had this idea. It might have been when Artem met Ricky Martin and swooned, or maybe when Nick Viall and Max Chmerkovskiy had their kind of little bit of mini crush on each other. I would love to see some scenario where we get a same-sex partnership dance. Maybe they could do it as a kind of variation on the switch-up weeks that they've done before, except instead of switching, with other opposite gender celebrities, they can do it with other same gender celebrities, and just see how that goes and see how that dynamic is. I'm not going to hold my breath though, because Disney just barely had a gay character in Beauty and the Beast, and people freaked out. So so that might still be some time coming, but it's going to be the 25th season. I know that they're going to find some way to commemorate that in a significant, special way.
Yes, we have the 25th season, and then next spring will be Dance with the Stars Junior. So that should be very interesting.
That could be fun or just unwatchable. I mean, it could be the kind of thing where, no one wants to be mean to the kids, and so you're going to have kids who, and maybe, I'm sure we're going to have kids who are going to turn out to be fantastic, just like there are adults who turn out to be fantastic. But I just feel like it's, I like Dancing with the Stars in general because it's kinder and gentler. It never goes out of its way to be mean, but I also don't want it to be so overtly fluffy. So it does need a bit of a sharper edge occasionally.
Yes, I agree.
And little kids are going to be limited as to what they could do for, say, like an Argentine tango. You're not going to get that, Jana Kramer, soaking sexy kind. That's not going to happen with the kids. So it also limits a little bit of what you can actually do with in terms of the dances. But that will be interesting, and it'll be interesting to find out who the judges are, who's hosting it, if it's going to be all the same team from Dancing with the Stars Senior, or if they're going to pick a different lineup of celebs or hosts and judges and stuff like that. But that will be interesting.
Yes.
Well, with that, I want to thank you for joining me tonight to talk about Dancing with the Stars, and for all the work you've done, working with me to cover Dancing with the Stars this season. And congratulations on being one of the top prediction scorers for the season. You scored 67.5% accuracy, and I scored 70% accuracy, which is, it's not great. I got a lot. We both got a lot wrong, but we'll learn from these mistakes and score higher next season.
Exactly. And we're, the Rashad and Normani of Derby's Dance with Stars predictions. So there we go.
And the middle scorer was, her name is Caroline Schneider, I believe is the name of the second place prediction scorer. So she's David Ross, pretty much.
There you go.
Except she got much higher scores than David Ross ever got, so.
That is true. We'll call her the Simone Biles.
Yes. And with that, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for watching. We will undoubtedly see you back here next season.